I think I know this question. How did you get the name Metallica?
How?
How the actual name? So it's sort of
Well,
a name.
before I really decided to get a band together, anything like that, just screwed around with the drum set by myself and just being like a headbanger and listening to Motorhead and stuff. This guy Ron Quintana that you might know, me and him were good friends way before I even got in any band or anything. And I used to go up to San Francisco. This was around the spring of '81. I went up there quite a bit, like for weekends and stuff, and hang out with him. And one thing that we were gonna try and do back then was get like some sort of magazine together. This was way before Metal Mania started and anything. And just one day on the bus, I remember we were discussing, what we were gonna call this magazine. And we went through like 50 different things. And one of the things that came up was Metallica. This was even before that book, Encyclopedia Metallica. And that name just stuck in my head as being a real good thing to name a band. So I just always kept on to that. And then when me and James got the band together, we just decided to name it that. That was like the best name.
What about sort of the phrase metal up your arse?
Huh?
Metal up your arse phrase. I mean, that's
me and a friend were talking on the phone one time and just bullshitting around. This was like even before the band really happened too. It was like, but back then it was like a lot of time was spent, imagining being in a band. This was like way back, about 3 years ago. It was like me and my friends, at that time, we spent a lot of time imagining that we had a band together even before we did anything. And I remember one time me and this guy named Hugh or some shit like that. We were just talking, and the phrase "metal up your ass" just came out of that telephone conversation. And it was just another thing that I held on to as a possible things for future bands. I guess it's quite popular now.
Because I get people write to me, finish letters, sort of metal up your arse.
Yeah. As you probably know, it was going to be the title for the first album and all that, but then we ran into problems with the distributor of the album in America. Didn't want, thought it was a bit risky taking a name like that just for a first project by an unknown band. So this was like a week or two before that the album was supposed to be, going to press the cover and all that. So we had like the manager called us up, one night at the studio, all panicking. The distributor has refused Metal Up Your Ass. What are we going to do now? You have 5 hours to come up with a new title and all this. It was quite hectic. So we came up with Kill 'Em All like overnight. That was like we were sitting around the kitchen table at the house we were staying, recording the album, and just kind of talking about what we'd like to do with those record distributors. And the phrase "kill 'em all" just kind of came out of that.
Do a drink.
Okay, yeah. You already got yours, right? Right. That's 10 feet. Because the roof was torn off by severe rain, standard badly damaged, and the pavilion partly demolished. A newsagent's roof was ripped off by the service system.
So who was in the first lineup?
Huh?
Who was in the first lineup, let's say?
The very first lineup as Metallica was me and James and Ron McGovney. I mean, there was people in and out, but that was before something you could even consider, a real band. I mean, the first serious lineup was me and James, and then Ron McGovney on bass and Dave Mustaine on lead guitar. That was like, well, you gotta remember that even before James played rhythm guitar, he was just a vocalist. So like the first gigs we did as Metallica was me on drums, James on lead vocals, Dave on lead guitar, and Ron on bass. And then this was all. This is like the spring of '82. All through the spring of '82, we were trying to make it a 5-piece and find a rhythm guitarist. So where James had been playing guitar for like 3 or 4 or 5 years, but at the time in LA there was like a real lack of frontmen, heavy metal vocalists. And James thought that he had a bigger chance, a better chance of like getting a band happening, as being a frontman instead of just another run-of-the-mill guitar player. So all through the spring of '82, we were looking for like a rhythm guitarist, a fifth member. We went through a couple of people. We actually did one gig as a 5-piece with James on vocals and another rhythm guitarist named Brad, who's now in some other band in LA. And the day after that, we just like listened to the tape of the night before and just kind of, me and James said to ourselves, maybe this ain't too happening. I think we got rid of Brad the next day, and James just took over on his, part in rhythm guitars. And the initial plan then was that James was just going to take over on rhythm guitars, and we were going to find a vocalist now. And then what happened was that we didn't want to sit around and be idle while looking for a frontman. So James just kept on singing while he was playing rhythm guitar, and that's the way it stayed since then. Because we probably auditioned maybe 50 frontmen vocalists, heard tapes of another 50 to 100, met 200 people who've just never been able to find anybody we thought would fit in exactly with what we're doing and what we were looking for.
Recently, or sort of way back?
No, it's been since since that day that we kicked out Brad and James took over on rhythm. We've been looking for a frontman. This was, I think this was April '82, and we still haven't been able. The only person, this is like a story that's getting quite old, but the only person that we've thought that would fit in is this guy from Armored Saint, who apparently doesn't want to do it, and that's the only person of all the people that we've been in touch with that we thought would fit the bill if he had wanted to do it.
What about just Cox? Understand he's sort of applied, as it were.
To be honest with you, it's quite funny, like, right when me and James got the band together, like, one of the people we were actually interested in, like, inquiring about being in the band was Jess Cox, but I think our, how do I put it, like, our requirements or just whatever, just for who we wanted has now gone above Jess Cox in terms of a voice or even the way he just looks nowadays. So we got a really nice letter from him, and, I just don't think that he's the guy.
What about Patrick Young of Black Blue? Was he sort of...
Who?
Patrick Young of Black Blues. Was he ever in the Metallica line?
Patrick? Who?
Young, obviously not. Black and Blue.
No, there was a guy who's in Black and Blue now. His name is Warner, Jeff Warner. Yeah. The very first person that I came from Denmark, and I moved to LA from Denmark in the fall of 1980. Just kind of winced about for a while by myself, and then the very first person I put an ad in like classified ad bullshit. And the very first person I got together in Jan was this guy Jeff Warner, who's now in Black and Blue. He came down one night and we just jammed around on like Motorcycle Man and stuff like that. This was February '81, even a long time before Metallica even happened, I think. And that just, the main problem was that we lived 75 miles from each other. He lived up in Hollywood Beach, so that just kind of slowly faded away because of the distance, And but me and him still stay. I wouldn't say we stay in touch, but we still see each other when we're in LA, and he's a great guy. The best of luck with his band.
So he was never in a Black Metallica line?
Well, I was telling you we were auditioning like rhythm guitarists, and he came down one day when we were auditioning rhythm guitars and like knocked around for a couple hours, and it just didn't really seem to fit in. See, he plays a very much he plays only rhythm too, right? Well, now he might do some lead, but that time he plays a very like a Malcolm Youngish rhythm guitar. Like what we've always been after is like a two rhythm guitars that play the same exact rhythm, And what he would do, like. The rhythm line would be going, and he'd be doing like open chords over it, like a lot like AC/DC does. And he would, he played that kind of rhythm guitar at, that jam that we had for those couple hours, and that wasn't really what we were looking for. So it was just nothing really happened. He came just down for a knockaround. I don't really know how that has evolved into him being a member of Metallica. I've heard rumors of that. It was quite fun. He was just down, wincing about for a couple hours. That's it.
How, before you actually got a record deal, everything. How well was you sort of the underground following you were getting through demos and stuff like
How what?
that? The sort of underground following you was getting through demos, through on demo tapes. Was you aware that sort of you were getting sort of a cult following? Or?
Well, I think part of the reason why we got such a good underground following was that I had been that kind of person, doing all the underground stuff before we really got the band going and all that. I mean, since 79, 80, I'd, been real interested in underground metal. I moved to America just right at the time when things started happening here in Europe, 80. And I kept, at that time, especially in LA, there was very, very few people that were into it. So it was like a real underground thing, and I knew the right people, like Ron Quintana, Brian Slagle, John Cornell, and people like that. So we got the band together and stuff. We, started doing some of these tapes and, Low Life to Leather and all those. And I just knew that you could get a real good underground following by sending them to the right people. People like KJ, you, Pat Scott. If you gave 5 or 10 people a copy of the demo, they would send it to 5 or 10 more people, and you would just kind of like spread out through like an underground following. And that's how we did it right at the beginning. And I think that
so that was planned. A lot of bands sort of say,
well, a lot of bands, a lot of bands, especially like nowadays, aren't too aware of this whole huge underground. I guess I was just lucky that I'd been like a headbanger myself and was really quite aware of that whole underground scene. So and there was all these fan magazines coming up, and I just, sent tapes to like 5 or 10 of my friends who at that time, I was drifting away from, like being a headbanger and all that, tape trading, while all my friends were still doing that. So I just sent it to them instead of sending the tape around myself to 100 people. I just sent it to like 5 or 10 people who were in touch with a lot of other people, and that's how we got that whole underground following started, by just knowing those people that were the principal underground people.
Why did you initially leave LA?
And we left LA for good, or moved away from LA. I can tell you the exact date, on February 12th, 1983. I have something with dates. I remember the dates really well. That's when we left LA. We started going up to San Francisco. You see, LA and Metallica in the beginning, in like the real early days, never really got along too well, because through 1982, LA was still very much poser, glam. We were like the first band in LA to really do something that was different from LA. All the bands back then sounded like Motley Crue, Rat, Steeler, all this sort like that. And me and James were really influenced by all the British metal, so that's what we naturally were playing. And we never really got on with the LA audiences too well. It was like we had a few hundred loyal people, but it never really spread beyond that. Then in the fall of 1982, we started going up the coast to San Francisco and playing some gigs up there. First, just to get the hell away from LA and do a show somewhere else, which we thought was quite exciting. And then up there, when we came up there for the very first time, supporting Bitch, we were greeted by all these headbangers in, denim and leather outside the club holding Metallica banners. It was like, wait a minute, what the fuck? It's just like a real band. And, we had never seen anything like that before. So most of the fall of 1982, we went up to San Francisco like once every 3 or 4 weeks and did headline shows up there. And it was fucking great because it was so opposite of what we were used to in LA. And even up there, we made really good money because we had, 400, 500, 600 people come to the shows up there and made, good money, which was something that we had never really done in LA. And so after a while, we just said, maybe we should look into relocating up there. Then at the same time, the other thing that played a big role in our moving to San Francisco was that we had seen this. There was like a San Francisco heavy metal night at a club in LA, I guess sometime around August that year. And me and James went down there. We saw this band called Trauma, and it was like really just nothing special. And then this band Trauma went on, and they had this bass player over, on the right side of the stage, like just all he did was headbang, and he was like such a great bass player. It was just kind of, we turned around and looked at each other and said, that's a bass player we should get for this band. And he, of course, was living up in San Francisco, so we started getting in touch with him. This is, of course, Cliff, as you can understand. And we started getting in touch with him and trying to get him to join the band. At first, he was a bit hesitant, but when we came up to San Francisco all through the fall of '82, and finally around, I guess, the first week of December, we persuaded him to join the band. And he finally, okay, I'll join the band. And part of the agreement with him joining the band was, of course, that we moved up there since he didn't want to have anything to do with LA. So we kicked out Ron on around the first week of December. The next 4 or 5 weeks we just spent getting all our shit together, and then we relocated to San Francisco there the first or second week of February. Cliff entered the band.
Where are you based now? You say?
Based definitely in San Francisco. There seems to be very, very big, it's something different everywhere. Even we played a show in Chicago just a little while ago, and the advertisements in the paper said from Canada, Metallica, which is quite funny. In Kerrang, we've noticed it says usually from New York. But I want to, make it very clear that we are 100% based in San Francisco. We're from LA. We have record company and management in New York, but the band, the 4 members are based in San Francisco, which is because we feel, a lot of times that very, very loyal fans in San Francisco, the Metallica fans, a lot of times we feel like, we're kind of, shitting on it when they read, based in New York or whatever, around. We're definitely San Francisco based, and I can't imagine that ever changing.
Before you got your deal with Megaforce, was you approached by many labels? Or?
Yeah, we were this far from signing with what now is Rockshire Records, which is what handled Alcatraz and Tony Carey, and a band that I don't know if you're familiar with called Citizen Kane. And this was in LA in the summer of '82. They brought us into the studio. The tape that started circulating as a No Life to Leather, they actually brought in. They brought us into the studio and to record an EP. And about 1 or 2 days before we were going to sign the contract with them to release EP, we just said, wait a minute, because at that time this was like a couple of weeks after we were in the studio, and we'd started, playing the tape to some different people and stuff, and like the response we got was so overwhelming that we thought maybe we should just hold on and see what else happens, and because these people too at Rockshire Records weren't really too heavy metal. They didn't really know too much about what was going on with heavy metal. So we just kind of, shopped around. We talked to the people at Firesign, which handled Riot. We talked to Mike Varney, who was very interested in doing something. And I guess basically what we were looking for was a kind of deal where we could get the hell out of California for a while, since we've been there for so long and we'd like to see what else was happening. And one day I got a call from John Z. I'm interested in bringing you out to the East Coast, and off we went. Because we were, so hungry on getting out of California, because we'd been there for so long. We wanted to see what was going on elsewhere. And one of the other things with John Z, Megaforce and stuff, compared to Mike Varney and people like Brian Slagle, is that John Z at the same time runs a management company. Varney and Slagle, all they are is record labels. So they don't really do any kind of touring or anything like that for the bands. And as you probably know, we've done 2 or 3 U.S. tours now. Here we are in Europe. There's not one band from Metal Blade that has even been out of California, that kind of thing. So we're really happy. John C. and Megaforce is definitely the best independent label we could be signed to. I mean, next to a major label, Megaforce and Crazy Management is definitely the best situation we could be in.
When you signed the Megaforce, there's a lot of rumours coming out really about you being ripped off contract.
Mostly rumors. I mean, you gotta understand that when we signed to him, it wasn't like a 10-figure deal with 8. I mean, it was not like there was too much money involved. There was a lot of hope. There was a lot of enthusiasm from his part, from us, to really try and get some kind of project off the ground. But it was not like there was that much cash involved. So, like in the beginning, we had to make a few sacrifices here and there. And, like there's all these stories floating around, and we used to live in this place in New York City and eat bologna sandwiches without bread and all this crap. I mean, it's basically, those were rough times, but that's just what we had to go through, I guess. That was our part of, whatever the word is, hard times, but we're not really, I feel right now the working relationship with John C. is better than it's ever been. We're really starting to know what he's starting to really understand what we're looking for as a band, and we're starting to get him to know him a lot better as a manager and as a record label, and right now things are really working out the best that they have ever, and we're really happy with the situation.
Another one of the rooms.
Huh?
Another one of the rooms that they get thrown off radio stations and things like that.
What was this again?
Being thrown off radio stations for swearing on the air and stuff like that.
What?
You obviously
No.
Relations, perhaps, but privately, but
I don't know too much about that. What is that? So we can back up more than that?
Just somebody told me that soon after you'd gone to New York, that it was being ripped off, of the recording deal, and also just being thrown off a radio station for swearing. And another one when Dave had left and things like that. Obviously, Dave. How did you get rid of Dave?
Why?
The mother and her 3 children all escaped unhurt.
Well, I think there were two. I mean, the two main reasons were, as I've stated in interviews before, I think me and James always felt, with getting the band together, that the initial lineup of Ron on bass and Dave on guitar, they weren't really people that we felt, would take all the way. It was like we weren't going to sit in LA and just audition people and not do anything. So we just thought, let's get a band together, let's get some kind of lineup together, let's just start doing what we have to do. And then whenever we find people that we might think are a bit more happening, we'll get people that are more happening. It's not like we're going to go out of our way to look for them. We'll just take it easy, and when other people come around, then other people come around. And with Cliff, he came around and Ron went out. And with Dave, there was two things. It was like we didn't really feel he was as good as lead guitar player as we would want for the band. And secondly, he had some problems, especially in the company of other people. When he had a few drinks and stuff, sometimes he would get extremely obnoxious, very hard to control. And he, a few times put us in very embarrassing situations in front of people as being a part of Metallica, and it was very embarrassing a few times. And then Mark, who our sound man is, who did that, and me and James share a house with him back in San Francisco. He, at the time when we moved to San Francisco, was a manager of this band named Exodus, so he was naturally playing a lot of tapes, and we were hanging out with him and stuff. And it came to our attention that this Exodus band had a really, really good lead guitar player. But we didn't really, think too much more of it, because things were, working out fine. We were in the process of going out to the East Coast and, starting this whole thing with John C. And then, the first week after we split from San Francisco on the way out to the East Coast, we encountered a lot of problems with Dave, what we now refer to as the road test. We had to, hire a few roadies because we couldn't really handle life on the road. Dave was seemed we fell, victim to on the road. And so after about a week and a half, we had to, unfortunately, fire him from the band or kick him out, or however you want to put it. But we had such a heavy schedule of commitments, right when we came to the East Coast. It's we had gigs set up the first week with Vandenberg and the Rocks and stuff, and then the next week with Venom and stuff. So it's when we came out to the East Coast, we asked John C, we got this problem with Dave, we want to send him home, we want to, get Kirk Hammett out here. When should we do it? Because we had, 2 months of events set up, with recording of the album. And he said, let's do it as soon as possible. So we played a gig with the Rocks on Saturday night, and all Sunday was basically spent sobering up and stuff. And then Monday morning, off went Dave. And Monday afternoon, Kurt came in. And Friday night, that same week, we were on stage with Kurt. So that shows you just how much talent. I mean, he learned the whole set in 5 days. We were ready to play gigs with him on that Friday. And so we were back into the schedule and commitments that we had made.
Is it difficult to get Kurt to leave Exodus, or?
No, one phone call. Hello, you want to come out and join the band? Because it was I don't really want to brag or anything, but at that time, Metallica still is more or less. Well, now I guess we're not really. I wouldn't really call us a local San Francisco band anymore, because now we're pretty much an international band. By that time, we were definitely the biggest local heavy metal band, in the San Francisco scene. And Exodus were obviously smaller than we were. And it was just an opportunity for Kurt to get one step up and get away from California. So we called him. On the day we decided that Dave was going to get kicked out, we decided that somewhere in Indiana or something. And, come out next Monday. He came out next Monday, no problem.
Was you sort of happy with Kill 'Em All, way it finished?
I guess I should be. I don't know. It was recording the album, the whole process of that 6.5, 7 weeks we spent in the studio. They were quite rough or horrendous, however you want to put it, because the people that we were dealing with, and I can safely say this because we're not going to be dealing with it again, weren't really allowing for us. I guess what I'm trying to say is that we pretty much know what we want, and we pretty much feel that we know. I mean, we're pretty confident in what we want and how we want ourselves to sound, and incorporating our own ideas and stuff. And, we're pretty independent in a lot of ways of thinking and stuff like that. And we're dealing with these couple of people up at the studio that were treating us like pretty much like kids that we didn't really know what we were talking about. They were like in charge of this project, and we were supposed to follow, what they were saying and stuff like that. And so we had a lot of problems. Kirk and Cliff went home to California as soon as obviously recorded on the East Coast. They went back to California as soon as they laid down their tracks, and me and James stayed behind to mix and make sure everything was happening, and just make sure everything was working out right. And I mean, it came down to the point where they wouldn't even allow me and James in the studio while they were mixing our songs. And it was like, once every 3 days, they were so nice to allow us into the studio to hear what they had mixed, and to more or less tell us that this was how it was going to sound. And then if we had any suggestions or anything we'd like to say, they would listen maybe for a minute or two, and then we could go out and come back in 3 days later. And there's a lot of things that we're really dissatisfied with the way that album sounds, and also with cover art, especially the back of the album. There was supposed to be 4 live pictures, around that terrible picture in the middle, and just a lot of things like the pictures of Cliff on the inner sleeve were not the pictures that he had chosen, and just there was problems in the lyric sheet. There were mistakes, and I mean, Kill 'Em All to me and to the rest of the guys in the band is pretty, something that's pretty much of a nightmare. But on the other hand, I mean, the way everybody seems to, like it. I mean, I remember when I was like a kid, I used to read in interviews, like with Richard Blackmore and stuff. He'd say, I can't stand listening to myself play. I can't stand listening to Deep Purple. I always wondered, this guy's fucking crazy. What's he talking about? He's, member of the greatest band in the world, If I was in Deep Purple, I'd listen to myself all the time. But now I think I can understand what they were talking about, I have probably listened to Kill 'Em All like 2 or 3 times after it's been released, and each time I hear it, it's more and more depressing. I know that sounds probably real big-headed or real, but that's just the way I feel. That's, honestly the way it is. And if a few things had been the way that we would have wanted them to, I can't see any reason for we couldn't have been 100% satisfied with the product. Because we were talking to, friends of ours like Raven and stuff, and I asked John, from Raven, are you 100% satisfied with the way your new album came out? He goes, yes, there's not one thing we're not satisfied with. And I go, gee, that must be a real good feeling, And then, I sit down and then look at Kill 'Em All and listen to it. I just go, if this would have been the way we said that it should have been, and if this would have been the way we said it should have been, and if the people that had done it the way we would have wanted it to be done, then we would have been satisfied. So, I mean, just can really only blame it on other people.
Why did you change to full motor breath to full horsepower? Was it?
What? Mechanics?
Sorry, mechanics.
Well, most of those songs on Kill 'Em All, like a policy, one of the policies of the band is that every song we write is album quality. We don't write any filler material. Now we have 20 songs. Now we have to choose 10 of them for the album. That kind of shit. The first 9 songs we wrote were going to go on the first album. The next 8 songs we write will go on the second album. And most of the songs, the first 9 songs were written quite early on in the band, where people were still learning, people were still developing. We didn't really know as much as what we're doing as we, did when we recorded the album, and opposed to how like we do now. And we just sat down and went over the songs, a few weeks before we went to the studio and said, where can we, change them for the better? And I think if you sit down and listen to the early demo tapes, there's changes in almost every song, except maybe Motor Breath and Jump in the Fire. Well, that too. But like, Four Horsemen, was just, we had this mechanic song, we thought we could make it a lot better. So we did. And songs like No Remorse are a lot different than early demo versions. Phantom Lord has a 2-minute middle part that wasn't on the early. Just thought, let's try and update it as much as we can. And that's one thing I'm a little bit worried about, like the second album, because there's a phrase like, you have all your life to write your first album, but you only have, 8 months to do the second album, And I'm sure that a couple of months after the second album is released, we'll be sitting down and going, oh, we should have done this here, because we had such little time to do the second album. But we just updated the songs to, just like I said, we recorded the album a year, more or less basically a year after most of the songs were written, so we just updated them.
What are your sort of favourite tracks from the first album? Do you have any favourite tracks?
Well, personally, from my point of view, there's a couple of things that play factors in what I like, That's how I feel about playing the song, how I feel about the song itself, and how I feel the song came out on Kill 'Em All. I think in terms of production and sound, I think Jump in the Fire has the best sound to it. Personally, I like playing Seek and Destroy probably the best, and I think every one of them has a song. I mean, I like every one of them equally, or else I wouldn't, I would just, each of them I like as much as any other ones, because if not, I would update them or try and update them. So, just we want. I mean, I dislike all the songs just as much, but there's a few of them, like for instance, a song like Metal Militia, I hate playing it because, it's so rough on me because it's so fast, but, sitting back and listening to, I love it, Seek and Destroy, I really like playing a lot. It's just great playing that song on stage. That seems to always, get the crowd going the most too. But I think in terms of production-wise, I think Jump in the Fire came out the best on the album. It's got a really, really good mix to it. Songs like Phantom Lord on the album sound fucking horrible in terms of production and sound. But I mean, I like all the songs, even in terms of songs.
Who chose live B-sides for the single?
We did.
Yeah, so you had sort of total control over that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's one thing that is really good about the situation we're in. We are really, really in control of what we're doing. As opposed to, it's not like we have a major label saying you gotta put harmony vocals here and all this. We're really in control of what we're doing, which is I'm sure it's not gonna last, but it's really good about the situation right now. And from that show that we recorded those live songs for Seek and Destroy and Phantom Lord, had a good live feel to them, and it just came out really good. So we thought, we would want, a slow song and a fast song, one slow and one fast. And so that was a combination that we chose.
What about the new album? Because you were saying yesterday it's like progression in music style or whatever you want to call it.
Well, I don't really, I mean, in what progression we're going, that's mostly up to like the fans to decide for themselves. But there is definitely some kind of change happening, and we all very, very feel, for ourselves that it's definitely for the better. And however it will be received, we're gonna have to see then. But all I can really say, I don't really want to say too much, because if I say too much, people might think that we're doing something really different. It's just we're growing up, and our songwriting is maturing a lot, and I think that's probably enough. I mean, the songs still have that Metallica feel, the Metallica energy, the Metallica, power to it. Just, growing up 2 years, and maybe accessible to a few more people without losing any of the people that we have as fans right now. I mean, I'm not saying anything along the lines of going whipping out a commercial or trying to broaden to get more people. It's something that's happening naturally. It's not like we're sitting down and going, now we want to make our songs better, or it's just something that's happening. It's like we write a song, then we sit down and listen to it, and it's like, wow, we're progressing, you know. And it's good because we really feel that, you know, musicianship-wise, we're all really progressing, songwriting ability, song arranging, really growing up and learning a lot. 'Cause, I mean, when we started out, none of us had not really had any kind of previous experience. Metallica was like the first real band for all of us. The first, you know, kind of dealing with a situation like, you know, a real band like that. And so obviously we've learned so much and gotten so many new experiences, and so we're just, you know, going, you know, learning a lot. I think is a good way to put it. But I mean, when people hear songs like, I think the new songs that we've been playing live, they have gone down better. When people come up and say that the material is so much better than anything on Kill 'Em All, which I agree with. And, you know, a couple of years I'll probably, you know, sit back and say that the second album is probably real weak to what we're doing at that time. But you know, what's really good to hear is that everybody who's heard the new songs say that, you know, it's really going in the right direction.
So you're not sort of disowning any of your previous songs?
No, because that's how we were back then. And now we're the same people. We're just, you know, have 1 or 2 years more experience. And in a couple of years, I'm sure, I mean, I'm never going to disown them because they were written at a time when we felt like that. And playing them live is always really good. I mean, playing those songs live is fucking great. I've played Hit the Lights probably 1,000 times, you know, not live, but, you know, with rehearsals and stuff. And, you know, every time I play it live, I still get the same kick out of it as I do the first time, you know. And we're definitely not disowning anything we've ever done. We're just growing up.
And the new album, you say got title?
Tentatively, the reason I say that is because, you know, last time we had like Metal Up Your Ass, it was like, this is the title, and then, you know, in the 11th hour it got changed, you know. So this time we have Ride the Lightning as title. It's a song that we do, and it's got, you know, it's like, you know, about, you know, this way of dying that some people experience through capital punishment. And, you know, it's just a song, I guess, to put it bluntly, just about, you know, what happens in the electric chair. And we have, you know, we feel a very brilliant cover idea that will fit good with that title, you know, and we'll see if it ends up being that. But, you know, right now that's definitely what it looks like.
Are you going to produce it yourself?
Well, we've always felt that, you know, our choice for producer would be Chris Sangaritas, and there's, you know, we haven't really been able to get him to do the next album. And
We've tried.
Huh?
We've tried. So.
Well, let's put it this way. Let me see how I can put it right. We've been in contact with this agency and representation, and we feel that at the financial point where we are right now in terms of what we're doing, we think that the price that he's asking, and you know, he wants a lot of percentage off, you know, the album too. We feel that since we're not trying to cop any kind of you know, a commercial sounding single or anything, that you know, what a person like Chris Sangaritas would help us most with right now would be stuff like arranging songs and stuff, and we feel that we're pretty confident in doing that ourselves. And this time we're working with, you know, we're working with people in the studio that we'll be recording. We're working with people that, you know, the engineer that will be for the second album is so brilliant. We feel that we can, you know, cut out the cost of bringing in a Chris Sangaritas to say, I think the mic should be placed 2 feet from the Marshall cabinet instead of 3 feet, and we should have 2 choruses here instead of 1. Because we will be recording at the studio named Sweet Silence in Copenhagen, Denmark, where Rainbow have done, like, I think the last 3 albums that Merciful Fate have done some early tapes. So the album, The Brats, 1980 The Brats, was done with this engineer that we're going in with. And we're really confident that the sound that we're looking for we'll be able to get with him. And so more or less eliminating the cost of bringing in a producer. So that means that the album will be credited as produced by Metallica.
Why are you recording an album over here rather than back in the States? Who's best placed? Or...
Well, I think part of it is we felt that if we stayed over here and recorded the album at the time when we recorded, then we'll be able to tour before the album and after the album. So we'll be able to tour the same 2 markets. If we came over and did a tour of Europe and England. And that would be more or less it that we could do before we would have to go back. But if we come over and do a tour of Europe and England, then record the album, spend 6 weeks record the album, then we could go back in those same markets, and do like, a new tour. And so like, what we're doing is we're really doing like 2 tours, in one plane fare over here, And plus, you get to spend more time in Europe and just being away from America for a while. I think would be real good for us. Plus, I think the way the plans have been laid out for 1984 is to try and concentrate as much as we can on breaking as big in Europe as possible. And I think Europe will see definitely a lot of Metallica in 1984. Right now, there's always been plans laid for coming back visiting in around the summer festivals in August, and so I think we'll be spending at least 6 to 8 months in 1984 in Europe. This is definitely wonderful, because we really like it over there.
When we first started out, was it an aim to make it big in England, like every band was?
I tell you, right when we first started out, when I heard, well, I mean, I can take it as far back to when me and James finished writing Hit the Lights. It was like, wow, we've written our own song. It was like, I mean, it's like as you go along, your goals become bigger and bigger. First it was like just writing our own song was like such a big deal. Then it was like getting vinyl out on, wow, we're gonna be on the compilation album Metal Massacre. And then just generally you go along and I mean, I never in a blue fucking moon ever imagined that I would be sitting here in England 2 years after I was over here trying to find out where Motorhead was hanging out just so I could look at them for 2 minutes. I mean, it's 2 years. Well, now it's about 2.5. I was in England last in October '81. Making out, trying to meet all these bands and all this shit. I have 2.5 years later as a band. I never thought it was ever possible. It's a great feeling. It really is good. It gives you some kind of feeling that you're really doing something right, And right now back in America, there's probably a million bands trying to do what we're doing, and it's like, I remember just, I must feel honestly, I really feel like when we started out playing LA, people would, Metallica, God, these guys almost like punk. All these LA poser bands with their hair like this would just look at us and laugh, And right now I'm doing a lot of laughing because those guys are still playing the same clubs on Tuesday nights in LA. And I'm playing, Art Shock Festival in 2 weeks in front of 10,000. It's a great fucking feeling, it really is. And I'm going to be sending many postcards home to a lot of people going, hello, we're in Europe and you're not. Who's got the last laugh?
Going back to your search for a vocalist, what sort of style are you looking for? Are you sort of looking the same sort of, similar to James, or more sort of Dio type of vocalist?
I've got a feeling it would do you
or anyone that just seems to fit right.
I think a lot of times people come up to us and go, we're here looking for vocalists, and it's like, just taking one look at the guy, I know it sounds probably real corny, but I think probably what's the first step before we even sit down and listen to somebody is if we feel they fit in, whatever, attitude-wise, look-wise. And I mean, I don't know, what kind of vocalist you're looking for? Looking for somebody pretty raw. I think the way John Bush sounds, John Bush is the Armored Saint guy. I think something to that effect, because I think he's capable of singing both like Metal Militia and Whiplash, plus like please don't discourage this out there whoever's reading this, like we have like a sort of ballad on the next album, and I guess we're looking for somebody who can still sing, Whiplash and Metal Militia with that same feel to it as James does, and then somebody who can sing, something slower with a bit more feel to it like a Dio or Sean Harris or whatever, and then somebody at the same time who would fit in stage presence-wise, looks-wise, attitude-wise, young, I mean, there's so many things that must be taken into account before we find the right guy if we ever do. But, vocal, sound-wise, I think it'd be like a combination of like James and Ronnie James Dio or something,
He made it so vaguely with no
So James is going to sort of do a sort of ballad on the album and such, or not?
Yeah, actually, I've been a little bit, what's the word, like nervous or just really wondering how it's going to sound. And then we just finished writing it about 3 weeks ago, and he's been working with the lyrics and stuff to it. The other day, I kind of, let's hear, how you were singing it. He started singing it, and it's like, it freaked me out. It just sounded really fucking good. It's like, it's his voice. It's not, as you can probably understand, the best to sing, like a sort of like ballad kind of. It's like a heavy ballad, like Beyond the Rivers of Death kind of thing, And he just sang it. And it just fucking sounded great. It really did. It really did. It was real surprising. Really good.
How would you describe Metallica's music? I mean, sort of power metal seems a popular phrase now.
Well, see, I can describe it two ways. I can describe it like Kill 'Em All, which everybody's heard. Then I can describe the new stuff that we're doing. I think the initial influences, like when we got together first, as obviously, people. I think Motorhead in terms of they were like the first band to play really fast, So I think our influences and sound owe a lot to Motorhead playing really fast. But if you sit down and really and try and figure out what Ulrich really are doing in terms of the song arrangement, of the way, they're not really riffs. Motorhead are more like thrashing on some kind of open chord or something, like instead of a riff that's repeated over and over. And where that comes in is that on this trip I told you about, 1981, I came over. I stayed with some people up in Birmingham, a band named Diamond Head. And I think, hanging around them for 6 weeks and staying with them for 6 weeks, the way they do their songs, back then I'm talking about like Lightning to the Nations period. They were all, repetitive riffs, riffing like repeated with catchy choruses and stuff. I think our early material, like the Kill 'Em All, it's basically a combination of like Motorhead's energy and speed, and just speed like that, combined with like arrangement and repetitive riffs that I learned, from staying with Diamond Head. You take like something like Metal Militia, it's like a riff that's repeated just at a really, really fast speed. While most bands like Venom or Slay or even Motorhead, they didn't really play riffs. They played, we do more something that's repeated over and over, which is one of the reasons I think we're doing so good, is because riffs like that are repeated over and over, they tend to be a lot more catchy and easy, for kids to, usually, what measure a band's success is, how catchy the material are, And I think that's, just catchy riffs and choruses just played at a great speed, I think that's pretty much the definition of Metallica, like Kill 'Em All. The next album, I think we got a little bit more, we're doing a lot of double lead, doing some harmonies, like some harmonies with, them playing different roots and stuff and shit like that. It's quite technical, which is something that Cliff has definitely brought into the band since he joined. Cliff is very technical and musical, very well educated, and he's brought in a lot of harmony things and stuff like that, which we're doing it's still with the Metallica feel to it, doing I think this song called Fight Fire with Fire, which will be the opening track of the next album, I think is definitely the best fast and heavy song ever. And it's still got, it's got everything. It's got energy, speed. It's got, this really nice dual harmony, twin lead guitar in the middle of it for a few, for like 30 seconds. It's like our songwriting is really like,
new breed of travel agents who believe it telling the truth.
There's a lot more things in it now than just your basic, riff and flash along for 3 minutes and let's play as fast as we can, and all this crap. I'm not really going to say too much about the second album because I think a lot of people might get wrong ideas.
Wait, let them hear it and judge
Huh?
themselves. Just want to let them hear it and judge
Yeah.
themselves. What do you think of bands that are like Slayer or Silent Anthrax and sort of, looks like they're jumping on the like a bandwagon, but they're sort of the same sort of refreshing sort of style?
Personally, I don't really listen to any of them too
But
much.
these new honest brokers are not only dedicated
Of course,
to the
I've
truth,
heard all of
they
them,
also believe
but
that
that's
their
more
brochure
like
should
just
be
to
fun.
hear them and see what they sound like. It's
Make
not
up
something that I
joke
put on my turntable repetitively. Slayer is, one story of Slayer. About a year and a half ago in LA, we did this one gig where we were headlining, and they were at the bottom of a 4-band bill. And the story goes, well, I mean, I was there, I know, they played all the covers. They do like Judas Priest and Deep Purple and Iron Maiden covers, Slayer. And then the drum roadie that we have playing on tour with us is a very good friend of the guitar player from Slayer. And the story, that he tells us is that after Slayer saw us that night, the next day they decided not to play covers anymore and to write their own fast, heavy metal songs. So enough said about Slayer. Apparently, they're a cross between like Venom and Metallica, and Anthrax have improved very, very much since we first met. They're really, really good friends of ours, and they don't. I mean, I don't think they sound that much like us, like something like Slayer. I think they have quite a good independent sound. Anthrax, I think their album sounds really good. And there's a lot of bands though that you guys haven't heard about over here yet, like in San Francisco and some other bands we've met, like in Chicago, Cleveland. That just kind of makes you wonder how they would sound if like Kill 'Em All had never been. Which in one way is quite satisfactory because usually the bands that make it the biggest are the bands that have their own sound and then other bands copy. Like you have like the AC/DC sound, right? You have AC/DC, Crocus, Starfighters, Angel City, whoever, all these bands playing that AC/DC sound. The reason AC/DC are 10 times bigger than all the other bands playing their sound is because they were the first band to do it. And that makes me really feel good because I guess we were the first band, maybe along with Venom, but I don't really think we have too much in common with Venom anymore. To have that, play that sort of metal that we do, which is good for the future because maybe that's a sign that we're going hopefully as far as we would want to go. And just usually the bottom line is that bands that make it the furthest are the bands that have the most original sound. And so with all these other bands copying the talented sound, that means that we must be doing something a little bit different.
We're really sort of leading the way, sort of leading the way.
Yeah, I guess so. Because when we started doing what we were doing, about 2 years ago, there was definitely not any bands that sounded like we did then. And like the only fast metal band around there was really Motorhead. And like I don't really think they had too much in common with them. Some people that don't really know too much about metal, anything that's fast, that sounds like Motorhead. I don't think we do Motorhead at all, except just we play fast. A lot of energy.
Do you sort of get a chance to listen to many other bands, or?
Yeah, I definitely try and keep up on as much as I can on the scene. And I think we might be one of the only bands that really listen to a lot of bands that are like smaller than we are. Just generally keep up on what's happening. You notice a lot of times that you interview with bigger bands like Judas Priest. They'll be talking about some off-the-wall band that are really big and go, yeah, I've heard of this band named Iron Maiden or something like that. That kind of attitude, but we really pretty much know what's going on, on both sides of us, under us and over us. And to be honest with you, there's not that much I like that's like smaller than we are in terms of popularity. It's like a couple of years ago when I was more like a fan of the musician, I used to appreciate, it was like I was after things that was just as heavy as possible. I used to take great pride in hearing about a band before anybody else does, that kind of bullshit. But now I'm speaking more as like a musician in a band that I tend to listen for bands that write good songs and have good musicianship and stuff like that. And right now, what I listen the most to at home would probably be Purple in terms of musicianship, songwriting, and just sheer brilliance. Purple, Richard Blackmore, is for me right now is definitely what I listen to the most. I tend right now just to listen to mostly big bands. Like my favorite of like the big bands today, has to be Iron Maiden. I think they're really one of the only of the really big bands that I really like what they're doing. Those guys are fucking really good. And there are bands like Judas Priest and stuff. I don't really care too much for what they're doing nowadays. But I think Iron Maiden are really good. Other bands I personally like, like Diamond Head, I really like.
Even in their stuff.
A chip pan more than half
Well,
full of
to
oil
be perfectly honest with you, I think I might have some kind of complex with it. I mean, if they put out a Duran song, I still might like it. I think it owes something to do with, I stayed with them. They're such a big influence on what I put into, my contribution to why I'm credited on all the Metallica songs, like mostly arranging and stuff like that. And they, were my biggest influence in that point of view. And I think I could like anything they did. And I mean, I even really liked the new album. I'm sorry out there. Maybe you should like stuff like Leonard Skinner a lot, CC Top. I know when you play, Metallica songs and you're surrounded by as heavy metal as we play all the time, you tend to, especially me, I know it's the same way with like Kirk and stuff, tend not to listen to stuff like Slayer and Venom just because I feel you get enough power metal from just playing Metallica, and Cliff, listens a lot to like southern rock like Molly Hatchet. James is like one that really listens to all that stuff all the time. He loves bands like Discharge and GPH and that kind of stuff, just with sheer energy.
You used to play Diamond Head songs.
Yeah, we used to do 4 Diamond Head songs. See, right when we started out, like another thing that has to do with we didn't really want to just sit on our asses, and do nothing for a long period of time. So, what we always wanted was, our own songs that were a little bit better than everybody else's. So, one of the most important things, writing a good song is that you're not in a rush to finish it. So we felt that if we were going to come up with a set of 10 songs to play live, it could take a very long time. So since we didn't want to just sit and do nothing for, a year of writing 10 songs, so why don't we just get, a cover set together and start digging around. We thought we'd get a cover set together of songs that people didn't know in LA, so they thought they were our own songs, instead of just going up there and playing, Breaking the Law and Run to the Hills, So we got together like 4 or 5 Diamond Head songs like Helpless, Sucking My Love, and like Evil the Prince. We got a Sweet Savage song called Killing Time. We did a few other covers, just like New Wave, Big Heavy Metal stuff. I just kind of did that over in LA for a while, which is quite funny. Then, as our own songs came about, we just kind of chopped, the covers and just put our own songs into the set. We still, if we're very drunk, we can still play some of those, for a good laugh. A few weeks ago, did a private gig, like in a basement, just sort of for like 50 friends, and we were extremely drunk. And like another band that we really like listening to is like Merciful Fate. We went through Merciful Fate medley and did like the old Diamond Head covers. It was a good laugh. It's not something we'll ever do on stage or anything anymore.
You don't write any covers at all?
No, not anymore. We have so much control.
So what would a European live set include, say, some new material?
Well, one of the reasons that we've been playing the new songs in America is that we've been playing all the Kill 'Em All songs, all the time over there. So I think, that these European gigs will definitely include more or less every song on Kill 'Em All. And since we're in an opening position, I don't think there'll be time for anything else. We might throw in maybe just 1 or 2 of the new songs, maybe on our chart dates if we get, longer set there. But basically, since it's our first visit to Europe, we're on to promote Kill 'Em All, and we're on Kill 'Em All tour for Europe. So what we'll be doing will definitely be all Kill 'Em All, and just as little of the new album as possible. And like I said, the reason we've been doing the new songs in like America's, you know, all these people that have seen Metallica 10 times, you know, I mean, it's cheating them. They pay $8 to see us to keep playing the old songs where we actually have 4 or 5 new ones.
Well, first of all, I think no volume is a bit of a cliche, too much of a stereotype.
Yeah, so what you say you're going to be over here for about 6-8 months?
No teeth. I think
well,
as
I know right now, we have a schedule more or less put down until around mid-May. Then what we'll do then is probably go back and mix the album. We're only recording the album in Copenhagen. Mix the album in the States. And probably do like an extensive US summer tour, like through June, July, August on, you know, the new album. And then right now we're in the process of some business, you know, just some business things that are changing over here with the people we're dealing with in England. And what we'll do then is come back on whatever. I can't really talk too much about that. But, you know, we're being, plans are being laid out right now for us to come back and, like, most likely do Reading and then do another couple of European tours through September, October. And then there's also a lot of interest in Japan. It looks like we'll be visiting Japan right around November. And so just, you know, spending like between now and May over here in the US tour for the summer and then come back to Europe for the rest of the fall.
Do you mention because about Bruges Festival? Bruges Festival in Bruges.
Yeah, I've heard.
A heavy sound festival.
When is that?
It's also
July. I got a letter from yesterday mentioning the bands are going to be on it. Metallica.
Really? Interesting. Don't really know too much about that yet. I know that we've been invited to play there, but I think the way that the plans are going right now, we will probably be spending the summer months in America, although that, you know, there's always one thing that's certain in the music business, and that is that everything is uncertain, you know, and so that's just the way it looks as of today. Tomorrow it might look different, but we definitely have a schedule laid out between now and mid-May, and from then on, we have to mix the album. The album's being released the second week of June. The reason I can pinpoint it to that exact date is that it's like another business decision that's got something to do with some contracts and some other things I can't really go into too deeply. But the album will be on the street the second week of June.
Yeah, that's both in the States and here.
Yeah, there will be like a single coming out probably about 4 weeks before the album gets released. And, it's something that we're being pressured into doing that we really don't like doing, but it's something that we might do. And that is throw an unreleased song on the B-side of the single, because, like I'm saying, you know, every song that we write, we feel we want on an album, like it's album quality song, you know, not really any filler material for a B-side. But it looks like we're going to have to throw like an unreleased song on the B-side of a single to release a single that we really want to release, you know, like 4 weeks before the album comes out. So there might actually be a Metallica song that's not available on the album. That's terrible.
It's 7-inch or
12-inch buses, you know, that's what Music for Nations deals it. They'll probably be just, you know, like an A-side and a B-side, just like the black film, 12-inch.
Sort of a picture disc at one time, is that?
Huh?
I heard there's sort of a picture disc, or is that something that?
Definitely nothing up in the air or anything.
So, I mean, yeah, Megaforce were going to release a picture disc similar to Venom, so.
No, there's nothing. The single that's coming out there around by like early May, which will feature, you know, like the featured single cut from the album, plus most likely an unreleased B-side in America will be like a poster thing and some other shit. You know, be like a package kind of. I don't think it'll be the same in Europe, but right now I don't know anything about picture disc. Oh, they could probably do on this.
Are you sort of a bit apprehensive about the reaction you're going to get?
What?
A bit apprehensive about the sort of reaction you're going to get from people in Europe? Any
What's apprehensive mean?
Well, sort of
Worry? To be honest, no. I think we're going to go down the storm. I mean, I don't want to sound corny or big-headed or anything, but I mean, I think I've over the last couple of days, you know, just heard from so many sources how big the buzz for Metallica really is in Europe. And I think I'm starting to have really good confidence in that we're going to go down fucking tremendous, especially like in Paris and Holland and Belgium and stuff, you know. I'm really looking forward to doing those gigs. And I'm, to be honest with you, a lot more worried about England because of the way the metal situation is in England right now and stuff like that. And since we're being booked in venues for the March, April tour that might be a little bit bigger than maybe we should be in, you know. But for Europe, I'm not the least bit worried because I know we'll go down the storm.
Was that from the correspondence you've been getting?
Yeah, just, you know, from just talking to all these different people that I've been talking to over the last couple of weeks, and, you know, all the fan mail we get, you know, I mean, all the fan mail we get almost is from Holland and France. And I was just doing an interview a few days ago with a guy from Enter Magazine. He says we've been voted the #1 band in Enter Magazine, and he says there'll be 10,000 people there for the Paris show, and you guys, you know, with the Arts Rock Festival, you've been telling me. I mean, when I keep hearing stuff like, you know, we're #1 band in all these magazines and stuff, since most of the people that are going to come see a Metallica Venom show anyway are hardcore people, you know, which, you know, are probably people that are voting for us, and I'm pretty confident that things will work out fine. I would be more worried if we were doing, you know, support on a Def Leppard tour or something. But yeah, but I mean, us and Venom, you know you're only gonna get people there who are really into that hardcore stuff. It's not like Joe Average is gonna come down, oh, Venom and Metallica, and then we're gonna check him out and maybe bring my girlfriend or something. You're only gonna get the hardcore bangers, so there's something really good about it.
Meantime, you are just one of boys.
That's it.
Look again, sir.
Anything else you want to add?
Put a smile on your face with these 2 programs tonight on ITV.
Why are you only #5 in the dramas?
Well, I wish. I mean, I don't want to, you know, sit here and defend, but well, let me just say that I've improved quite a bit, simply because of one reason, that ever since the day the band started. I mean, ever since I could keep a 4/4 beat, which you probably have to be pretty incompetent not to be able to do, I've been playing in the band. So I never had any time by myself. And that's one thing I really regret nowadays, is that I didn't have, you know, maybe 2 years of playing drums by myself before I got into a band. I was so keen on getting a band situation together more than being a musician or a drummer, that as soon as I could go boot cat, you know, me and James got the band together. And since then, it's been pretty much non-stop work as a band situation, and I never really had any time to sit down by myself and practice, you know, by myself, until after the Raven show, which finished on September 3rd. Between September 3rd and when we went out on the road again in December, I probably had about 3 hours to myself every day. And let's just say that I've improved, you know, towards, you know, about 10 million %. And, you know, one of my really big regrets is that, you know, that I wouldn't have been able, that I wasn't able to record Kill 'Em All the way I can play drums now, because that would definitely have made the whole package sound, you know, a hell of a lot different. And people everywhere I go just come up to me and go, is this really the same drummer that did Kill 'Em All and all this, you know? And you know, it's really good to hear people say that, and I'm really all standing there smiling, going, yes, which is real good. And, you know, I've mastered playing double bass now and all this shit. I just, you know, I regret that I didn't have, you know, a year or two by myself. Just me and my drum kit for a year or two before I got in a band situation. And that's, you know, so for the polls of 1984, I'll be right up there as #1.
You haven't got that drum kit now, have you?
Huh?
It's got stolen.
That got stolen, yeah. Oh yeah, but I was just down, you know, we were down checking all the equipment in this morning, and the drum kit, you know, I got this morning is wonderful. I feel already right at home on it. And it's just too unfortunate with what happened last week in Boston. You know, the whole truck just got ripped off. 40,000 grand worth of shit just gone, you know. All the Marshalls, all, you know, Marshall heads, bass rig, all drum kit, drum riser, flight cases, all the effects racks, everything just gone, you know. That's the way it goes. But at least we were able to come to Europe anyway, because you know, the only thing we were going to send over were the drums, you know, and So now the only thing extra we have to rent is just a drum kit, you know. Luckily, it was so cold in Boston that night that the road crew took the guitars out of the truck to put them in the warm room so they wouldn't freeze, you know. Because, you know, if the guitars would have gone too, we would have been in pretty bad shape. So,
oh, nothing. It's like, but you don't do drum solos, do you?
no, that, I mean, people can probably say to me and go, he doesn't do a drum solo because he can't play one. That is actually not true anymore. I would be able to pull it off. It's just, to me, I mean, when I come to an album or to a live show where there's a drum solo, I'm just as bored as everybody else. And everybody else in the band hates drum solos. I hate drum solos. And probably everybody in the audience hates drum solos, so I don't see what the point is. And we already have, you know, Cliff doing a bass solo and Kirk doing a guitar solo. So me doing a drum solo would just put everybody to sleep, you know. That's one thing that we like to try and keep up during our live shows, you know, some sort of energy level. And not have it go, you know, Metal Militia, 5-minute drum solo, Whiplash, 5-minute bass solo, you're just up and down, you know.
So I suppose you've only got a short set anyway, so you're going to try and do as much as you can.
Yeah. Definitely. But, you know, I just regret that, I mean, it's something that you're always going to be regretting no matter what situation. I mean, I wish we could record Kill 'Em All tomorrow. And it would sound a lot different, you know. I mean, I can only speak for like how I would have liked the drum playing to have been on the album, or and you know, in a couple of years I'll probably be going. I wish we could re-record Ride the Lightning because we've improved so much. But I just feel really bad when I listen to Kill 'Em All on the. I mean, the playing of the drums it's so basic. It's like help, you know. It's just really good to sit down and know you've improved, you know, over like that short period of time, you know, which is really good. I'm talking out of my ass right now, so maybe we should call it a day.